Thank you. I'm Dan Barraclough. My wife Kathy and I own Saratoga Glen Farm. We're involved in many parts of the business. We breed our own horses, both here in Kentucky. My wife breaks and trains about a dozen a year. We have a shipping business. But as well as that, we consign at the Fasig-Tipton sales here in Maryland, OBS in Florida, and we own breeding rights and shares in 8 stallions in New York at 5 different farms. So we have a pretty interesting variety of activities in our business, and I think it gives us an interesting viewpoint on a lot of what's being discussed today. I agree with a lot of what Robin and Barry and Joan and Becky said. I believe about 90% of what they all said, and I think there's a lot of commonality to it. Knowing coming into this meeting that some of the big issues were going to be New York sires, their ability to be sold here at Fasig, and awards, I gathered my thoughts, and I think it's important not to change the program as it is. I think it's a great program. I think it's increased the quality of mares in the state. I think it's increased the quality of veterinary care in the state, blacksmiths. I think it's doing what we want it to do, and that's a strive towards excellence. I think we're getting better hay, better feed companies. I think the economic impact of the program cannot be understated. I'm concerned that too many wholesale changes would act as a signal to out-of-state breeders that there's more volatility in our program than really what is. And I think we should be very careful about making wholesale changes to the percentages awards, who earns them, open company, and the like. For me, the big issue that I see is that we need to increase the demand of our New York sired horses. And if we increase the demand, it'll increase the value of them. Fasig-Tipton isn't excluding our New York sire, NYBreds, because they're rooting for the home team in Kentucky. They're excluding them right now because they can't meet the average, and that's how they look at the inspection process. I'm there every year when they inspect a dozen horses at my farm. They have a number in mind, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, but their goal is always to take as many horses as they can fill the stalls out there and make as much money as they can doing so. And if that's taking a tappet over a 40 tails, then that's what they're going to do. Their job as inspectors is to increase the average or hold the average to the best that they can. So how do we get more New York breds into this sale? We increase their value. We make them more desirable. And my thought is, can we do that by having sire races? And I've talked to Joe McMahon and a couple other people about this, but I think a lot of the problems we're having marketing our New York breds to owners is that they don't think they can compete with a 40 tails running against a Chester Broman Medaglia d'Oro. And whether that's true or not, that's a perception, and often perception is the reality. I don't think it would be a bad idea to have some discussions about having sire races, New York sired maiden special weights, New York sired allowance races. Not just the New York Stallion Stakes. And I think we need to build a stronger partnership with NYRA and Martin Panza in particular to really have a serious look at how these races can be added to the calendar. Maybe they're not run at Saratoga, maybe they're run at Aqueduct, where having a 14% increase in handle, it would be appealing in November, December, January, February. We need to build more strategic partnerships with the racing entities to have a series or certain races where owners feel like they can compete in those races. And if I'm trying to sell a New York sired horse to an owner and they think they can win one condition against what they're considering equal competition, win $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in 2 conditions, I think they're willing to pay more for our New York sired horses. And maybe that New York sired average goes from $25,000 per yearling to $50,000 per yearling. And then Fasig starts taking a look and saying, hey, these horses are worth more. Maybe it's better off to take a Freud than it would be a cross traffic or an equal kind of pedigreed stallion. And I think that helps increase the value of all the New York breds. As a side note, I think it also helps sell more seasons. I don't see a reason why we couldn't have some of these races open to New York sired 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds that are foaled and raised out of state. So now we're opening up the program to, possibly New York sired PA breds. Right now I have 2 mares at the farm. The lady sends them from Pennsylvania. They foal in Pennsylvania. They get bred to New York stallions. They're being bred to Central Banker. And they go back to Pennsylvania and foal. Why does she do that? She wants Pennsylvania breds that are eligible to run in the New York Stallion Series. Now, if we opened up that concept to having maiden races, allowance races, now we start bringing in more people that want to take part in the New York program. We add more vanning, more feed sold, more veterinary work, more boarding farms. I think we need to look at how do we improve the product we have now instead of taking away from what we already have, which is, I don't know about you guys, I think it's working great. There needs to be a little bit of an adjustment to it to support the New York Stallions. Like I said, I own 8 seasons or shares and breeding rights in New York Stallions, and they are hard to sell. Robin's right, it's a tough sell. How do we make that an easier sell? Well, we make it easier for breeders to sell those horses. Most of us in this room, at some point, need to sell our product, whether it's to a racing partnership, a syndicate, yearling sale, private sales. Very few of us in here are going to breed and race everything we breed. So we need to have a market for those horses, and I think by increasing their value, we can bring in more buyers. Phasig will either add another sale here to accommodate us or take more of those horses to the preferred sale. And I think it benefits everybody. We sell more seasons. We have to give away less freebies. I'm doing what Robin's doing. I'm offering free shipping to sell some of my seasons. I'm doing Breeders' Award splits like Barry will do. We're all kind of doing the same thing. I think we need to look at how to raise the quality of that product, and I think we can do that by tweaking the restricted racing program. Ontario has a nice program where they have Ontario sire races, and many times I'll be at a sale in Kentucky, and the Ontario sired horses will be worth twice what the Kentucky sired Ontario breds are worth for the same quality horse. And why are they worth twice as much? Because they're running in a field of other Ontario sired horses, equal competition. The handle for those races is great because, again, bettors want to bet a full field of horses of somewhat equal competition, and it works for everybody. It works for the Woodbine, the Ontario Racing. It works for the breeders. It works for the stallion owners. And I think we need to look at maybe some of the other programs and take a little bit of what they're doing well and incorporate it into what we're doing here without trying to penalize Kentucky farms, Kentucky stallions, Kentucky owners, etc. Has there been any research done on zip codes on where the breeders' checks are going to? How much is going to Kentucky compared to this region, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, New York? Those states are all basically New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, those are Northeast states.
Yes, we have done studies on zip codes, but that doesn't tell the whole story. For example, if you look at zip codes where money's going out of state from all the awards, about 47% of that money goes out of state. But then you have to consider people like Becky Thomas, who own a farm back in here, stands stallions, hires people, pays local veterinarians, and who probably $1 million comes back because she's told me she needs her pinhooking operation to support her operation up here in New York. And there's many people like that. SF Racing boards mayors for about 9 months out of the year at Sugar Maple, and many of them, and farms across the state often have boarders that are paying board for a good part of the year. Right,
it's an important part to have, And a lot of my clients live in, Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts. They're Northeast New Yorkers. They have summer homes up here, but maybe they get their mail in Connecticut. So, I think looking at where our breeding awards are going doesn't really tell the whole picture either. So that's kind of what I was getting at.
First, could you tell
I've talked to Joe and Jeff. I haven't talked to Tracy about it, but yes, I realize there is some resistance to having what they're calling a restricted program inside a restricted program, and it's not happening. But how do we, I think we need to work to making that happen, and, I would like to hear why we couldn't have a program like that. The Chris K, Martin Panza, they say it's not going to happen, but haven't really given a great reason why. They mention diluting the product and other kind of catch terms, but running 4-horse fields in February at Aqueduct with inferior horses, that's not helping the product either. I think it'd be better to help the product of racing with full fields of New York sired horses. And in turn, it helps all of us. It helps the stallion farms. It helps the breeders. It helps the state economy. So it's been tried and it's been recommended, and they've been resistant to it. But how do we try to bring them over to our side? And I think part of that is giving some purse supplements. Maybe we do bring the Kentucky Sired Awards from 15 down to 10. Maybe we drop the Open Company Owners Awards down a little bit. Not a big change, 5%, 2.5%, something small, and give a purse supplement to NYRA. So now we're running $60,000 maiden special weights, and the breeders are giving $30,000 for the purse. So now NYRA's running full fields, paying half the purse, getting all the handle. If they're not interested in something like that, which would be, $1.5 to $2 million in purse supplements, I'd like to know why they're not interested in that. I'd like to get some answers.
So that was a great presentation. Thank you so much. So just not to make NYRA the bad guy, and because I'm so deeply involved not only in breeding but in racing, and if Martin Panza was here today, I think he would say that the problem is they can't fill races. We had a made New York bred turf race yesterday, first race, 7 horses. This is mid-May, turf, made New York breds with 7 horses. One of them was an MTO. So there is a shortage of horses, and I think that it's not that they don't want to do these programs and there isn't resistance. The fact of the matter is, if you can't fill races, there's no sense riding them, and that's the issue. And that's also the reason why, we've put together these educational seminars, and the series of educational seminars that Joan, who just left, is the committee chair of, and to try and increase the population of horses to get not only a better quality product, but more horses, so we can actually fill some of these races. And this isn't only a New York issue. This is an issue all over the country where we have, races that aren't filling. Cards are shrinking as far as, not running anymore 5 days a week. A lot of the racetracks are down to 4 days a week. And during the winter, as far as in March here at Aqueduct, we're running 3 days a week. The reason for that is essentially they don't want to run 3 and 4 horse races. Now, getting back, and on top of that, if you continue to restrict, you don't want to have out-of-state New York breds, you don't want to give breeders awards out-of-state. What restriction does in any program is it tends to shrink the program. So as you shrink the program, you will have, in this case, if you did away with Kentucky sired New York breds and you did away with those horses, then you would have less, or you could say goodbye to the preferred sale because they wouldn't have enough horses to put in the preferred sale. In a couple of years, you can say goodbye to the New York bred restricted race program because they wouldn't have enough New York breds to fill the restricted races. So now what you have is you have New York sired New York breds being forced to run open company, not just against Kentucky sired New York breds, which are now not New York breds, but open company horses also. So things like this, when you talk about changing a program that's working so well and has produced, so much revenue, income, and an industry, fueled an industry in New York that's grown over the past 8, 10, 15 years. When you start talking about restricting it for, specific interest groups, you're going to get yourself in trouble because it's going to come back to bite you, okay? Also, I've been on the board, Susie and I have been on the board for the past 22 years. 28 years. Is it really 28? Oh my goodness. Anyway, and being a New York breeder or in the state for this will be my 38th year here, we've seen the program go through a lot of changes, and a lot of things that we're talking about, we've already tried 15, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. They did not work. So we've arrived at this program the way it is now through an evolutionary process of trying things that didn't work and then evolving to what we have now. So these things have been tried. And the point I wanted to make is, in backing up what Dan was saying earlier, is that whenever you make changes, whenever we've made changes in the past to the New York Bred program, people say, oh my God, it's the New York breeders, they're making another change. And what they do is they back it, the rest of the country or the rest of the breeders lose confidence in the way we run our organization, and they back right out and they back right off. Or they will sit there and wait to see until the dust settles as to what is actually going to be where's the stability? Where can I say, I want to jump into this because I feel like it's stable? And that goes for anything. That goes for any type of big business organization. So you don't want to make changes, and then we were talking about earlier when Joan mentioned, a lot of these changes have to be made legislatively, and if you start making legislative changes, and you have, because of the budgetary situation and people looking for money, you can open yourself up to a situation like they had in Pennsylvania, to whereby other factions in the state needing money look to the rich horse breeders that have a $60 million program and go, well, why do rich horse breeders have $60 million? Why can't we have it for education, child care, So there are a lot of things that have been thought about and talked about here tonight that we as a board, both boards, not only the New York Thoroughbred Breeders, but the Fund Board, deliberate constantly trying to tweak this program to make it even better than it is. So I know it's not better for each and every individual person, but as a whole, it's a very strong and solid program. As far as some of the big stallion farms that have stallions that they say the money's going, has to stay in the state, well, a lot of these stallions are owned by Kentucky farms. So essentially, the stallion awards are going to Kentucky because they're owned, some of these stallions, Alpha, I'll name it 2 or 3 more, are owned by Kentucky farms. So essentially that money's going to Kentucky also, even though it's a New York stallion. So yes, there's money going out of state, there's money going to all different types of states, but that's because we have a successful program that can pay the amount of money we have to the people that, again, are awarded for breeding a better horse, whether it's by Tappet or it's by any of the New York stallions. If you got a horse that's good enough, you know what's amazing? I don't know if you guys realize this, but the horses don't realize who their fathers and mothers are. If they can run, they get out there and run. If they can beat anybody, they get out there and beat anybody. And they don't know how much they cost, who they're by, who they're out of. They just get out there and run. So it doesn't really matter. If you got a good horse, they're going to get out there and they're going to earn you breeders awards or owners awards.
We have 5 more speakers. He wanted to make one more point, and I wanted to answer Barry's question that he asked of me. And that is, NYBreds has told me that their attorney will be getting back to me. But, when you're thinking of who supports you, since Rob is here from the governor's office, I know that he has explained to NYBreds that the law says when it comes to purse enrichment that, yes, the racetracks have to use it the way we ask them to use it. And out at the Finger Lakes, when we added $7,000 first place bonus to New York sired New York breds that win their first race out at Finger Lakes, that they get that $7,000 bonus, and it has helped. It helped them have full fields, and it increased the handle. So You had another point.
Sorry, just one more minute. And Tom kind of jumped in to kind of clarify some of my statements, but I'm against making anything more restrictive. I think we need to be more open tent and let more breeders in. And I think by having a sire program, we can do that. We can take advantage of the collapse of the Massachusetts breeding industry. We can take advantage of the collapse of the New Jersey breeding industry, and we can have New York sired Jersey breds, New York sired Massachusetts breds, Pennsylvania breds, and that helps the stallion farms. It helps us here. We're boarding those horses. It helps the shippers. I think, and it helps NYRA. Now all of a sudden, instead of having PA bred races run at Philly Park or not Parks, I guess, and Penn National, now those horses are coming and running at NYRA, for these New York sire races. So it's gonna take some time. If we started breeding these horses this year, it'll take 3 or 4 years to get the field size up to where, they won't be having trouble filling fields. But I think it adds 100, 200 New York sired horses to the pot that's gonna run at the New York tracks. And that helps NYRA. I understand that today it would be hard to fill races with both New York sired horses and open, Kentucky sired and New York sired New York breds, but it's a process. It might take 3 or 4 years, but I think in the end it helps NYRA, it helps the breeders, it helps everybody. So I think it's something that should be taken a look at. Because it didn't work 15 years ago doesn't mean we shouldn't try it again now. The whole landscape of the breeding industry has changed in 15 years. There's no more Massachusetts racing. New Jersey racing's on life support. The New York racing is flying, and there's no reason we can't do better at it and have more stallions in New York, sell more seasons, and take advantage of the other states' inability to run their state program. Let's have some of the other breeders in surrounding states join in. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Our next speaker is Tony Gray. And I want to mention something else that the governor's office has tried to help the breeding fund with, and that is they tried to get the law changed this year such that we can openly provide money for aftercare.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I live in Florida, and my mares and stallion live in New York, and I felt that any kind of change was a front that I need to show up and give you my 2 cents on that. I got involved in the New York program back in 2003. I was fortunate enough to know Jack Work, who started the Nick thing. Back then, not many people knew what a Nick was other than someone's name. So I bought into a stallion, Freud, and then I bought 10 mares that nicked very well to the Stormcat line, and then after being stuck about $1 million in 2007, they started running really well. And as they say in this business, about every 10 years, you get a chance to get even. And that kind of happened to me in 09 and 10. So my concern today is integrity of the program. Back in 2005, we were supposed to have slot money, and then Elliot Spitzer came into NYRA. And then 2009, and then finally 2012, we finally started getting some money. And now there's maybe a move of front to change things. Well, as you know, when you breed a horse, like make a decision today, we're gonna breed a mare. It's not gonna be born for a year. It's not gonna be to the track for another 2 years if you're lucky. So, 3, 4 years later, I'm hoping to get breeders' awards. And I can't make an investment decision thinking that the rules are going to be changed along the way. And as far as the stallion money, I don't have the exact number, but I would think that over the last 6 years, Freud has generated in stallion awards at least $300,000 a year. So that's $1.8 million. So why someone hasn't bought a $2 million stallion like Unified? I thought he'd be a perfect match for New York. He made his bones at the New York tracks. Son of Candy Ride, sexy. But he winds up in Kentucky. So maybe if the Hatfields and McCoys in New York would get together and put together $2 million and buy a quality stallion like a Unified, then we would have something to be proud of. And I wouldn't have to put my really nice mares on a van to be bred to something in Kentucky that's worthy. It could be right here in my backyard, but there hasn't been a $2 million stallion come to the New York market in probably 10 years. So, That's my biggest concern. And Robin, I give you guys credit because you're getting creative to get people to, paying shipping fees and these different things. I thought 3-4 years ago, maybe I would pay people to breed to my stallion because I realize the money you get in stallion awards. And until you own a piece of a decent stallion, you don't realize how much money there is. Like, I'll give Newmark as an example. I was involved with Newmark with Chester Broman, Becky Thomas, and Louis Lakin. We paid $200,000 for the horse. We sold him to Turkey a few years later for like $50,000. So we had out of pocket $150,000. In the last 5 years, he's generated over $300,000 in stallion awards. So we got out because the program is that strong. And, I heard Joan and also Tom Gallo talk about quality. And quality is the thing. I mean, who's the most famous New York bred? Funny side, who is he sired by? And where did he stand? Thank you. And what if Audible had won the Derby? Be the same thing. So what puts us on the map is quality. So the program needs to be left alone. It can always be tweaked a little bit, but no, tweaking has more negatives than positive. We have mare counts up, amount of foals being born is up, the program's working, the New York breds are only going to get better with these Kentucky sires. And yeah, we're business people. I had to switch to Kentucky sires. I can't breed to a New York stallion. Even Freud, a good-looking Freud, might bring $100,000 if you're lucky, and he's the best guy in town. So, if I want to get 6 figures for a year, I got to go to a Kentucky stallion, and that's how I survive. Is I sell my baby, I make some money, and that gives me enough money to be back here next year. So, my message and my reason for coming is please leave the program alone. Do not mess with it.
We're going to do comments at the end because we want to get through this. And at the end, Tom can come up here and do a song and dance, a little spritzer down your pants. Tom Mina. Tom Mina, you signed up to speak. You signed up to speak. I believe that's your name. Is there somebody who signed up who has absolutely illegible handwriting?
I have to tell you something. This game is driven, I'm also here to support the program as is. But this game, we all have to understand, this program that we're all part of is a bonus program, okay? It means when you have a horse, you all know what bonus means. It's not a life support system, it's a bonus, okay? That's number one. Number two, to address Barry's point and somebody else's point, I've been talking for years that this game is driven by gambling, nothing else. Don't kid yourselves. If there wasn't gambling, there'd be no horse racing, okay? We'd all have pets. And gambling is driven by, listen, I'm a superfecta bettor because I look for the home run. I don't need to win $12, I want to win $12,000. I usually lose for the year. But the point is, that's the biggest revenue maker for NYRA and the state of New York, Governor's man, okay, is the exotic wagering. And with 5- and 6-horse fields, you have very limited wagering on exotics. NYRA could write races this way. I've told this to Barry many years ago, told it to Jeff 55 times. How about this condition? Maiden special weight, New York sires preferred, okay? That encompasses all the sires in New York. And then you go on. Now, if there's 11 and Chester has a Bernardini and he gets in, well, too bad. Let the best horse win, okay? But you can start by having NYRA. NYRA kind of shoots their something off because full fields are what drives revenue and it what drives this game. And you can't do it by saying, well, these are New York breds. We don't want to see 10, 12 New York breds run when we could have 3 Bernardinis and 2 into mischiefs. That's bullshit. What drives the business is handle. Handle, handle, handle. And when you have a 12, Jeff did a lot of research over the winter and proved that full fields generate purses. And the other thing, Governor's man, you have to understand, without New York breds, There's no NYBreds. They can't fill races. They can't do it. So they can take that esoteric ground that they want to stand on and say, oh, well, we don't care about the 500,000. We're NYBreds. That's baloney. If it wasn't for, everybody here can look at the charts, and I did it for 2012. I know it's a long time ago. I did it with somebody in the state, the budget office, okay? And we looked at who fills the races, NYBreds. The most profitable meat in 2012 was Aqueduct. I'm talking about ROI, was Aqueduct in a winter meat, okay? That was the most profitable. And without NYBreds, they don't run that meat. And then what happens is, now Saratoga, a beautiful Saratoga that we all, I mean, I live here, a lot of you live here. What happens? Our trainers of these NYBreds, oh, we'll give you 4 stalls. But if Romans wants 40, he's in. He's bringing all those Kentucky people in. So you talk about the Kentucky situation, NYBreds caters to them, okay? All the guys that fill the races all winter, they get bupkis when it comes to Saratoga. Now, I understand that, you know, you own a lot of stalls here and a lot of trainers, and you need the quality racing. I understand that. But there's been guys that come here with 30 and 40 horses in the summer, and they run 11 races. Now, and that's because NYBreds is catering to them. And just, I want to say it again, and I don't mean to be redundant, but it's field size that drives this industry, nothing else. Thank you.
Chip Landry? Chip and I go way back, not 36 years, but a long way.
Actually, I've been part of the program for nearly 50 years. And it has changed many times in that time. And what was said about the outer state people wondering what we're doing if we start changing things, that's very critical. And I think one thing that could be done is to try to improve the value of the New York sired horse. And if the New York sired, New York bred, if the New York sired, New York bred had a reason for a buyer to buy them over and above buying the one that is a Kentucky sired, then Fasig-Tipton would have to bring in more New York sired horses. And I think that one way you could do that is just by giving a premium to the New York sired horse that's in a New York bred race. Don't restrict races to New York sired horses, but just give a bonus program to the New York sired horses because they are more of a 100% New York product. And that would, I think, would be a simple way to address many of the problems that we're talking about here of keeping people wanting to breed to Barry stallions because they know that the buyer might buy their horse because when it goes to the races, that buyer is going to get more money in the purse when he races that New York sired horse as opposed to the horse that's by the Kentucky Stallion. I know that we want quality, but the real thrust of the thing, Ellen isn't here, but her father, I think when they originally wrote this bill, it was primarily aimed at trying to keep the green space in New York green because all the dairy farmers were going out of business and they wanted them to turn into horse farms. So I think that I was a Virginia breeder and a Maryland breeder and a New Jersey breeder and a Pennsylvania breeder. I've had farms in all those places and I've supported the New York program more or less during that time. Right at the moment, I have a new foal that's by your stallion, and it's a Maryland bred. So there will be a Maryland bred war dancer. My thinking was that there are more grass races in Maryland, more opportunities, and that my foal won't have to be competing against some of the war fronts to get into a race in NYBreds, and I'll be able to run at Laurel or Pimlico in a grass race with my war dancer and have a better opportunity for my mare. It's a young mare. I want her to have black type. So also, well, Robin has some very interesting ideas about promotions, and one of her promotions was very attractive to my future partners in racing that colt. But anyway, I've been at it a long time. I don't think we want to change it too much. I think we just want to tweak some things. And I think the main thing that we need to tweak is trying to make the New York sired horse more competitive in the sales ring.
And our next speaker is Kelly Quinn Zanella.
Good morning. I want to thank both of our board of directors of both our NYBreds and our Breeding and Development Fund for being here and supporting all of us and working on our behalf. They are volunteers. They put in a lot of time. And, in general, we probably owe them all a round of applause for, putting in tireless hours of effort and work. I come and stand before you actually coming off the Oklahoma track this morning and watching my 3-year-old breeze, and it was really exciting, and it reminded me why we're here. We're here for racing. And we are here for good racing and breeding horses of quality. So I'm not gonna stand up here and say I don't breed NYBreds by New York sires. I breed to produce horses that will perform well on the track. It's not necessarily for selling them. I love to have the option of selling them. I'm what I call a micro breeder. I have 4 mares. So I'm a small operation with a small farm. And the other opportunity I have, I'm a realtor in New York State. So I'm seeing a lot of demand for farms, a lot of demand for stalls. In 7 years, I've never gotten so many phone calls of people wanting to buy farms. And I'm talking farms that are 50 to 100 acres in size with a minimum of 25 stalls. That's growing. There's demand. People are looking for land. Our land opportunities in and around Saratoga especially are shrinking. So in terms of the root cause and the core of our program for New York State with green space, I am working to continue to promote racing and breeding on that stance. I recently sold a 100-acre farm very close to here, and the gentleman who bought the farm never owned a horse. And the first time he toured the farm, he said, I love this property, but I don't own any horses, so why would I buy it? And I literally turned to him and said, if you don't want to have horses here, don't buy this property. So he said, tell me more about breeding and racing and what does it entail? And I said, it's a really great sport. As our stallion owners know, it's tough. It's marketing, it's getting out there, it's being at sales in Kentucky and educating buyers on how your stallion can fit their mares. So this really isn't a Kentucky, New York thing. It's breeding for quality, promoting farming, keeping our breeders in New York State, trying to build a strong stallion roster that works, and working together to make that happen. So I appreciate everybody coming out, and I appreciate the opportunity to keep it all inclusive. And for right now, I think the program should stay the way it is. It works. We will see more mares coming into New York State, and hopefully we'll get a stronger roster for stallions. Thank you.
After our next speaker, Tina Bond, then those of you who've put your hand up in the audience can come and make comments.
Good morning. Jim and I have been in the breeding business for over 30 years. We have a farm here that we moved from the Finger Lakes area. And we have personally ourselves probably 20 mares that we breed every year. We will have foaled by the end of breeding season 54 mares.
Tina, can you move closer to the mic?
So we'll have foaled over 54 mares at the end of the breeding season. It's a fantastic program. People seek out NYBreds, whether they're New York sired or they are Kentucky sired. And the reason that they do that is the Open Owners Awards makes a difference. Jim will seek out and buy a New York bred horse on that. I also am the managing partner of Bond Racing Stable. So I don't just breed, I race, and we have a retirement paddock. We bring them back home. So aftercare is very important to us. The program is successful. It is exciting. Where we were when we started this, how many years ago before, when the slots were promised, to where we are now is a huge advantage. But let me take another step, because not only am I an owner and a breeder, I am vice president on the board of the New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association. So I know what the problems are on the other end as well. The foal crop is down. It's about half of what it used to be. But there's not, the shortage is the shortage of owners. And the reason there's a shortage of owners and there's a shortage of horses in New York is the cost of doing business in New York. The workers' comp rate, we are at an outrageous rate. So there's trainers that will not come to New York because of the cost of doing business. So hence the field size shrinks. When the field size shrinks, he's 100% right. The handle goes down, the money is not there, and everybody wants to bet on the full field sizes. So there's a lot of things that we're up against, and it's a crazy, crazy business that we're all in. But it is successful the way it's run right now. There's been a lot of great ideas on what we can do to promote New York sires, and the program that it is benefiting the stallion owners. Because if you give your breeding rights away, then how are you functioning if you're letting all of these things? You're functioning on the basis of what your stallion awards are. And Mr. Gray was 100% right that Freud in the last few years has had over $1.7 million in stallions awards. And it goes on and on. Bustin' Stones has had over almost $600,000 in stallion awards. Frost Giant, over $700,000 in stallions awards since 2013. So with those awards, you need to reinvest, and you need to, and the stallion game is not easy. Why do you think Spendthrift does breed secure, whatever? I mean, they're very creative in what they come up with. But you have to reinvest in the quality. And if the quality is here, with my 20 mares, it costs me to ship some of them to Kentucky. I would rather go down the road and to 2 miles and breed a horse. If I could take that, have that same quality so that I have the opportunity to sell here, because most breeders don't race. I'm lucky, and I will take that shot with several of my mares, and I will breed them to New York sires, because if they're a blue blood, a blue collar horse that's going to try no matter what, they're going to make me a lot of money in Aqueduct in the winter racing. And winter racing is another thing that we need to protect. And with what Jeff's put together with the numbers, it is important, because without winter racing and without New York Breds, you are not going to have the farms. You are not going to have the green space. You are not going to have what we need. There's a lot of jobs that are going to go away, and I think if you change this program, you're going to lose a lot of this opportunity with the blacksmiths, with the vets. Everything is going to leave. If you change this program the way it is today into what you want to do and only have New York sired horses that are eligible for the New York bred program, I'm going to sell my 20 mares, and I'm going to, and I'm going to sell my farm, because it's not going to be worth it anymore. It's just, it's successful, it's good. We just need to build the New York sires, the quality. If you have it, if you have the quality, they will come. I promise you that, because it costs money to ship. None of us want to ship if we don't have to. But we're driven by whether it's perception or what it is, but it's the money in the ring is what a lot of breeders need. You can't wait 3 years. What if that horse never gets to the races? What if they never earn any breeders awards? Then you look at the money you've spent. You have nothing. absolutely nothing, and people cannot afford that, to do that year after year after year. So I would beg all of you to either pool your money together. Mr. Edwards was a great guy. I don't know if any of you remember him. But anyway, he had the Stallion Park in near Keenestad. And anyway, that was his dream, was to pool people and pool stallions and have a big stallion park. And I don't know if it's something that's worth it or not worth it, or if the stallion owners can work together and do something like that. But I think if this is where you want the program to go, then bring the quality here. And we will stay. We won't ship to Kentucky.
Thank you, Tina. Our next speaker needs no introduction, but I don't mean Tom Gallo. It's Joe McMahon. He's a breeder member of the Thoroughbred Fund, as well. He owns and races too, right? And stands stallions.
Thanks, Tracy. I've been in the business for 49 years at the location out on Fitch Road. I've seen a lot of changes. I've seen, a lot of difficult times in the business, which the fund has always tried to react to. I've been on the fund board for almost 30 years now, and the fund has always tried to be responsive to the breeders. Our mission, as all of you have heard, is manyfold. We serve many, many people in this business: the breeders, the racetracks, the environmentalists. We're trying to do a lot of things in the state, and I would say, in my opinion, over the last 30 years, we've done a really good job. There was no breeding program in the state in 1972. There were no mares in the state. There was nothing at all. We've been able to nurture this program, grow it through very difficult times, and right now is a prime example. The foal crop all over the country is shrinking, all over. Kentucky is shrinking. Florida is shrinking. Their breeding business is in a terrible condition. Locally, New Jersey, almost gone. Massachusetts, gone. Delaware, very shaky. Virginia used to be a mainstay, gone. The only place where you're seeing consistent growth, and Jeff showed it to you, is New York. So we do have a great program. We are working very hard to protect it, to keep it going, and we recognize that there's a lot of problems, particularly with the stallion business. We don't have the answers. All we can do is try to take what all you folks are telling us and try to take the information and use it in a way we can. One of the problems with the fund that I've noticed over the years is that we're very restricted in what we can do. We're restricted by the legislature to some extent, and we're restricted somewhat by the racetracks to some extent. Those are things that we can't, and I should put Fasig-Tipton in the same thing. We can't control those people. We can't control Fasig-Tipton for what they want to sell. They're a stock company. They respond to the bottom line. We can tell them, we can keep them informed about how things are going, which we do. I spoke with Boyd Browning the day before yesterday for about 2 hours. We try to do those kind of things. Jeff works with NYRA constantly. That's a battle. NYRA is a big problem in a lot of ways. They're our greatest friend and could possibly be our biggest detriment. The restricted race program for New York sired horses, I agree completely. If we could structure some New York sired races, we'd see fuller fields. We met with Chris Kay last fall out here at Prime. We showed him the numbers. We said to him, it's pretty simple. Your growth is in New NYBreds. Do something for us. Help us with, like Tom Mina said, with the stall situation for local trainers and for people that are here year-round. Recognize the fact that this is where the growth is, and you need to help it. We didn't get too far with any of it, but that's one of the problems that we deal with. So I don't know what we're going to do with this current problem. We're going to try to address it. We already did the Finger Lakes thing last year, which was very successful. We put a bonus of $7,000 for New York sired races, maiden races. It was very successful. They had more maiden starters in New York or Finger Lakes than they've had in the last 5 years. So it proved that it worked. We went to NYRA with the same request. We got shot down. So there's an example of what we have to deal with. And we just make the best of it. We're still negotiating with NYRA. We're still trying to make them see that this is a way where everybody benefits. We'd like to do those things. And the other thing that I heard a couple of times, and I think it's a great idea, is to pay awards, New York sired awards, in restricted races. And when I say restricted, you know, we can pay owners awards. We can supplement purses to some extent. But we cannot pay awards, pay owners awards in restricted races. We'd like to change that. The fund recognizes that that would be an automatic added value to stallions, and we would like to change it. We've been looking at it for 4 years, looking for the right time to try to do it. So it's we're not deaf, and we're really glad that you all came out here because this is good for everybody. It gives everybody a bigger, greater understanding of all that goes on. There's great things going on in New York now. There's new stallions coming in. Things are very good, in my opinion. We foaled more mares. We've been in business for 49 years. We foaled more mares this year than we ever have before, ever. Now, the years of Funnyside, 2003, 4, it was a busy time for us. We got up over 100 every year. We were over 130 this year. That's all mares that are coming into the state. That's new money. That's not, the growth is in people coming in, recognizing how good this business is in New York and availing themselves to it. And they breed back to the horses we have at our farm. They breed back to the horses we have with Becky. They breed down back to War Dancer. They use everybody in the state. So I think it's working. I want to change some things. I'd like to see a little bit of change, a little tweaking. Not a lot, not wholesale. But I think there are things we could do that could make it better. I thank you all for coming. I hope you got a lot of questions for us. Thank you.